Welcome to another episode of Times and Tides. Before we introduce the topic today and before we introduce our guests, I like to read as a prelude to the topic today a statement from Bill Lass. While some plants merely tweak the course of history, others grab it by the throat and practically hijack it. Tea plant is such a one. The contents of the teapot almost destroyed Chinese culture, helped bring about America's Bill of Independence, and enslaved hundreds of thousands of people in Southeast Asia. Did tea change history? Most certainly. Today, we are going to discuss on how plants in general have changed the human history. Now, what do we mean by human history and what plants we will learn about it? Before that, let me introduce our guests. We have two important guests today. Dr. Natesh from Department of Biotechnology. He is a well-known botanist, also interested in history. His recent book on the iconic trees of India has been in news for several reasons. One among them is that it also got an award recently. Congratulations, Natesh, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wonderful to be back on this show. Thank you very much for having me again.
Let me introduce Dr. Uma Shankar. Uma Shankar is again a botanist, a geneticist and a physiologist. He is well known for his work on how to use plants for human welfare or how to convert plants into resource value products. Welcome to the show, Uma Shankar.
Thank you.
And I hope we will be now having a very productive discussion today on this topic.
Sure.
Now, before we jump into the topic, maybe I'd like to start with you, Uma. We know plants have changed the human history. But in today's discussion, what I would like to know, perhaps request all of you to now concentrate is, how do plants have been responsible for changing the movement of human populations, violence that we went through? Perhaps they have also created wars. I'm sure Natesh may have some examples to talk about how wars also have been broken because of plants. So if you now consider like that, can you now list about half a dozen plants so that we can now start discussing on a small set of them? Maybe Dr. Natesh, you can also add to this list.
So, yeah, that's a very good point that you raise. I think there are more than probably half a dozen plants that comes to my mind, which have distinctly shaped the history as we know. Mm-hmm. They have changed civilizations. Mm-hmm. They've brought in new empires. They've created, I would say, violence. They've displaced people from one continent to the other. In a way, they have sort of been, should I say, brought about a tsunami change in how we had seen history before these plants came in and after.
When you say before these plants came, before these plants began to be used by the humans.
Yes, that's right. So, to my mind, there are few plants that I would like to sort of mention. For example, the sugar cane. Mm-hmm. Now, the movement of sugar cane from the Polynesian islands to the New World. Second, you have plants like quinine, the malarial plant or malarial curing plant. Then you have plants like the spices. Okay. Then you also can talk about tea and opium that have sort of radically changed the way that we have seen the world before and
Let us see what Natesh perhaps has to add to this list. He has listed sugarcane, quinine, tea, and
opium and
spices.
Yeah, let me add that plants have shaped human history, as both of you have said. Our view of history is mostly anthropocentric. When we talk about history, we talk about kings, queens, soldiers and others. Many plants have had far-reaching influence in shaping our history, often geography. But we don't even look at that from that angle and imagine that plants have been so influential. Actually, we take them for so much for granted. History has been changed by plants. Cartography, the art of making maps, art and science of making maps have been changed because new sea routes were discovered, new land routes were discovered. There are new commerce happened. and new boundaries, national and international, were laid out
Or rewritten perhaps.
and redefined.
Yeah.
And much misery was brought to many, and so much prosperity was also brought to many. So, among the plants that you have listed, I would like to add to the tulips,
Okay.
which became so important in the history of the Holland as a country. There was what was known as tulipomania at that time, and what was a very prosperous situation led to complete collapse of their entire trade, and they learned a lesson the hard way. There are many others like potato, for example. There are rubber, for example, and cotton.
In addition to what he mentioned, I just like to point out two species, two plants. One is wheat, which we have taken for granted. And of course, he mentioned potato. Now, perhaps these are the two major crops that probably created what I would say the population boom that we saw because of, let us say, the domestication of wheat in the Fertile Crescent, and of course potato.
Then maybe Natesh, I will start with you. I have heard a couple of talks, when you gave on this kind of discussions or in this particular theme. What I was particularly impressed about the way you connected tea and opium, and how tea was a driving force between the conflicts between British and China and India. Can we start on that?
Sure. If the history dates back to something like 18th century.
Okay.
At that time, China was mainly exporting fine porcelain, decorated specifically for Western taste, and figurines, furniture, and these usually had images of Macau, which was already Portuguese were there at that time. So part of the imagery was true. Part of the imagery was actually not true, just to create a fantastic image of China to the Western eyes.
Okay. So China was being looked up at that time.
China was this great Eastern force, and Westerners were very, they didn't know much about China, because Chinese would not let Western ships come to all their ports. They restricted them to stay only in Canton. What is Canton today? Though today it is called Guangzhou, I think.
Guangzhou.
So they were restricted only to a part of their chain, and they wouldn't even be allowed to enter inside the city limits.
When you say Chinese did not allow these Europeans to get into beyond Canton or Guangzhou, does it mean that Chinese were already aware of the value of these botanical resources or bioresources?
China was a very self-contained country. It thought that these Westerners who come to trade with them were barbarians. And they were the most sophisticated kind of people. The Chinese emperor was the equivalent of God. What the West wanted from them at that time was tea. Especially the English. Actually, the national drink in England then was ale.
Beer.
Ale, they used to call it ale. And within 50 years of introduction of tea into England, it replaced ale as the national drink. And they discovered a method of adding sugar and milk to tea. There are two times to drink tea: morning around 10:30, and evening 4 o'clock, 4:30. So by the end of 18th century, nearly 15%, 14 to 15% of all the tea produced in China was exported to England through the East India Company.
Tea was a Chinese plant.
Yes,
is that correct?
It was. It was. Let's say it was China and the Himalayan region, including parts of our Assam, Darjeeling, that belt. But it was practiced. The tea drinking was practiced mainly for 2000 years in China. They allowed this technology go to Japan. But the English especially were so ignorant as to that nobody had seen a plant. Why? Because no Westerner would be allowed inside, set foot inside. For example, they had heard of black tea and green tea. And for a long time, British experts thought that they were two separate plants.
Okay.
They didn't
One
even
for
know.
black tea, one for green
one
tea.
was a species which produced black tea, another one a species which produced green tea. Nobody knew how it grows, what it looks like, how to brew that tea, how do you pack it and
Process
so
it,
on.
okay.
They were so ignorant because they wouldn't be allowed to set foot at all.
Why could be what could be the reason why Chinese perhaps fell so much for the tea? Well, I have heard a story of the origin of tea in a mythical sense.
There are a lot of mythological stories regarding that. One is the sort of story that some leaves fell into the hot water, and that infusion that sort of was drunk or taken in by that person gave him a certain sense of elevated. So there are different stories.
But suddenly it keeps one who drinks awake and more spirited, and so that must have helped the people.
Nobody seems to know exactly
Okay.
what was the origin of the tea, but there are these legends and myths which you can't prove or disprove.
Yeah.
Correct.
But certainly tea drinking in China has helped their public health, hygiene, etc. Because we in India drink a lot of cold water. They drink hot water with the tea, and therefore the chances of waterborne diseases affecting their population is much less. So their public health is much better in China.
So in other words, Chinese had taken tea drinking as a cultural practice, and that was there, and so British came to know of it. It moved to Britain.
So England actually wanted, as the British fell in love with tea, more and more demand started growing up.
Okay.
In fact, at one time, a lot of tea was in demand in Britain. Britain could never satisfy or satiate the demand that was coming up because their population fell madly in love with tea.
Okay.
But the catch here was China would not barter tea for anything. They wanted payment in silver or gold.
Okay.
They would not sell tea for all the little trinkets that these people would bring and say, I will give you this, you give me tea. They said, no, we don't want all that. Pay in silver or gold.
I see the reflection of American insistence on dollar by Chinese almost 2000 years ago. Okay, please go ahead. Yeah.
Actually, and they didn't want any barbarian manufacturers.
Okay.
Because they had everything, they thought.
Yeah.
And they were absolutely a self-sufficient nation that time. So the balance of trade was largely with China. So much gold and silver was flowing into China in lieu of tea. And British were getting so frustrated with this.
It drains their economy.
And how do we actually, how do we rectify this situation?
Prevent
because
this position.
It's an untenable situation, right? So that's what happened. And they also had this insult to injury. They're not being allowed inside the Chinese domain. They were asked to stay in a place designated for Westerners, and each country which wanted to trade them had to stay in one little place, a compound built for them, and they had their warehouses there for trading, and they were known as factories. So there was British factory, there was French, America, everybody used to go.
I see.
And they used to call them factories, but they were not factories in the real sense. They were just warehouses. They were confined to those warehouses. They were not allowed to hobnob with the Chinese people. The emperor and government officials would not even deal with them because they were barbarians, who would like to come.
Now, was it purely because they considered them as barbarians, or Chinese were really aware of the importance of maintaining the secrecy of the value of a plant like tea?
They did consider them as barbarians.
How did the British broke this whole?
So they were thinking for a long time, what do we do? Our resources are getting drained. So they said, we must find something which the Chinese may want. So after a lot of this frustration, they hit upon this opium. And they thought, suppose we trade opium, the deal is done. So, but the Chinese openly would not want opium, right? So the British thought of a ruse by which they would grow large quantities of opium in India.
In
which was
India.
where, this is where India comes. You see, the nearest thing to China was their holdings in the East India Company, and they started plantations of opium.
Officially.
The East India Company started them,
My God.
mainly in Bengal, and because Bengal presidency was there after Madras, they had in Bengal, and then later they acquired, Bombay presidency and so on. So they started cultivating opium in large scale. It also included Bihar at that time, the Bengal presidency. And they set up a huge factory for processing the milky latex of opium in somewhere near Patna. And incidentally, it was one of the largest manufacturing units of that era anywhere.
I see.
Hundreds and hundreds of people used
So
to
can I ask a question here? Dr. Nitesh, if this was being done in India at that time, weren't the Indians addicted? How did that escape?
That question is something I've constantly asked myself. Opium was already known, I think, in the Mughal period. His question is, what was India's attitude to opium consumption, if I'm correct? And I think Indians in India, I don't think anybody looked down upon consuming opium. It is known also in many cultures, many parts of India.
Festivals,
and even consumption of bhang, for example, and so on. So large scale cultivation happened here, and partly it also happened in the Malwa region in central India. And there it was mainly a lot of others, not only British East India Company which did it, but a lot of Jews were involved. A lot of people who, some Indians were also involved.
Jews were already there in India by that time?
Absolutely. They came. Jews and Parsis. Parsis were there. They had come from Iran through Gujarat. A place called Sanjan was their first place of entry. And they were very rich people. They were very good at boat building, for example, these Parsis. And
they grew, Jews and Parsis, they grew opium as a business entity.
More than even growing opium, they built ships. Many of the ships in which opium was transported was built or owned and leased to the British by the Parsis. The Mazgaon dock today that you find in Bombay was started by the Parsis. And they were extremely good boat builders. Later, some Jews also came into it. There were also among them Parsis. Some Hindus were also involved in this. Very few of them. None of them thought of opium as a bad thing. They just thought about business of trading in opium and making some money.
So opium is being grown, ships are available.
Opium is being grown, but look at the detail here. The East India Company would compel these peasants to grow. They were compelled to also sell it to them, to the factory that was established by them. They couldn't sell it to anybody else. And once that is processed and collected and packed in boxes, the East India Company didn't want to, smuggle it into China. So it will all be taken to Kolkata. And then auctioned there, and anybody could bid for it. And people who bid it were mostly British, but also some of these Jews, some of these Parsis, and so on and so forth. So the East India Company doesn't have the taint of being accused of smuggling it.
So these people were taking it to China.
So they would take it. And they would take it through the sea route to China. And then there would be some smugglers of Chinese origin waiting there. Because officially it was not allowed, right? So they had small boats which were very well known for their speed. They would immediately take it to some boats as warehouses. From there they would distribute it into smaller boats, and then through the river channels it would go and reach.
So it's literally cheating China's governing system.
Totally.
Through smuggling. And British knew very clearly that our opium that is grown is going to be smuggled into China.
It was absolutely, they did it for that purpose, right?
I see.
And So this was a very effective situation.
May I stop here? Now, so they smuggled. How did they gain tea because of this?
Just give me a minute on this. So by 1780s, Britain was running up a very serious trade deficit on tea.
Okay.
And as East India Company profits failed to offset the cost, British tea drinkers pushed Asian trade figures further into the red.
Okay.
I mentioned all this already. So they thought of opium. They found a solution in opium. And they found poppy as a very lucrative crop because of this. And then just allow me to give you some figures on this. By 1700, tea exports from China through the East India Company was 92,000 pounds. By 1751, 50 years later, tea exports was 2 million pounds to England. And by 1800, 23 million pounds, valued at 3.6 million pounds of silver. That was the trade deficit.
The link I want here, Natesh, is they are growing opium, smuggling it. How does the British get the tea from China?
So, yes, the question is, after they had taken this Bengal, plantations, by 1840, opium generated 40% of India's revenue. This was so profitable that 40% of India's revenue for the East India Company came through opium.
And so that perhaps might have come as silver and gold only, through smuggling again. So in other words, China's gold was being smuggled by selling opium in the smuggling, which was being given back to China officially to buy that tea, perhaps.
But opium smuggling was not official.
I know.
I mean, they purchase by the common people. Now, what happened there? It penetrated into the Chinese society. Common men started consuming opium.
Nuisance started in China.
Absolutely. I mean, people became addicted to all these things, right? And because of this addiction, not only from Bengal and Patna, but it used to also go from the Malwa region to Bombay. From Bombay, it would go to Kolkata, and then it will go to, So these small boats that they used for smuggling was called clippers. And they had very great speeds, and they could stealthily take this by river routes into interior parts of China, and they penetrated the heart of China, and people started becoming addicts slowly. And that is something, which is much more problematic. And China started becoming very uneasy about this addiction. And from time to time, emperors started issuing edicts saying that opium is banned in this country. It is coming illegally. And
least
so on
respected decrees.
And first they issued one in 1729. Then they issued it following 60 years. It continued to happen, and it continued to be sold, bought and smoked. And suddenly parlors for smoking opiums, the opium dens as people call them, started appearing. Like we have these computer parlors where everybody can go and, it became so common in China.
Like internet cafes.
And internet cafes, something like that. People will just go, start smoking, and then lie down the whole day. They became idle. So much so that it penetrated the Chinese army. Where their defense system was completely, became addicted. It was a great thing those days to host opium parties. And the wealthy initially were buying it. Then it became a fashion. It penetrated the other strata of society. Now everybody started smoking opium. And then these parlors appeared where anybody can go and smoke. You smoke and become idle, you become unproductive, you become a burden on the nation. If the army itself gets so corrupted on opium, then imagine what would happen. In fact, opium increased imports or if you can call it imports, it increased tenfold by 1839. Okay? And from 3,159 chests to 40,200 chests, China's balance of payments entered red.
Okay. Oh, the other way it happened now.
It now completely changed over. And then
So what
during
were the measures that China took to prevent this?
So, as I said, they started issuing these edicts beginning to begin with. You know how these things are. You issue an office memorandum. There is an act of the. You say all biodiversity should be protected in our country.
Yeah.
Does it happen at the ground level? So, people say, the government says, I have done this.
Okay.
But over the years, decades and decades, a rot started setting in. Many of these government officials also started colluding with these smugglers, and it was a done thing,
Okay. So it collapsed the entire system.
The entire system collapsed, right? So these opium smoking kits evolved, pipes became,
That's okay. But how did the Chinese actually?
So Chinese started issuing these edicts. Opium is addictive, as you know. Once you start taking it, it affects you. And overuse creates a lethal physical condition that results in, even in extreme cases, death. And the opium actually, one of these receptors, the mu receptor, reduces releases of chemicals, and it also reduces sensation of pain. So it alter your entire mind also, and Chinese emperor then, they became very alarmed. Not only the emperor, but the entire administration becomes alarmed. Finally, in 1838, the Duangang emperor decided to take stern measures against opium addiction.
At last.
It has now reached a proportion that, army is completely paralyzed almost. So they became this thing. So this emperor appointed a man called Lin Zexu.
Okay.
And he was appointed as the imperial commissioner to Canton. Canton, they knew, where the epicenter of all this smuggling that is happening. And previously, when they had issued edicts, they issued orders to all these government officials, and they would say, we have arrested this fellow, we have recovered this much, now everything is fine. They are all in cahoots with all these people. So Lin Zexu was a different man. He was made of a different metal. He was a bureaucrat known for his competence, his honesty and integrity. And he said, he's going to eradicate China from this evil of the influence of opium. And the moment he started, taking charge of the Canton area, he arrived in this Guangdong province, it's called. And 1839 it happened. And his first move was to put pressure on Chinese traders. In that area. And he said all the traders and smokers, he started putting pressures on them. And within 2 months of his arrival, he arrested 1,600 of them, Chinese opium dealers, and confiscated 14 tons of opium and almost 43,000 opium pipes. And if you, in those 2 more months, he imprisoned 5 times more Chinese felons compared to the total that had been done in the previous 3 years. Within 2 months of his arrival.
It was very effective.
So he meant business. And because he was a man of integrity.
And so this would have affected the British flow.
His first thing was to deal with his own corrupt people. Second thing what he did was, everybody knew that the international merchants of Canton were henceforth forbidden. He also forbid these merchants to trade with these Westerners. In terms of opium. So initially he spoke to all these foreigners and said, look, please forfeit your opium stores. You're not doing a good thing. What you're doing is absolutely dishonest. It's a corrupt thing. And please, if you give us this opium, whatever you have here, you can exchange it for tea. He gave them that option also. And then this ultimately failed. Why would anybody want to take tea for something, a commodity
what
which
government
sells
gives
for
is peanuts compared to what they were getting per
thing, smuggled thing. Even today, a contraband thing that you sell on the roads can fetch you 100 times more or whatever.
Than what government can buy. Yeah.
So, 6 weeks later, the merchants gave up nearly 1.2 million kilograms of opium with all the pressure that he was bringing because he blockaded their factories.
Okay.
If you're not going to give it to us, we will blockade all your factories. So after this blockade, they had no option. They surrendered their tea. And then beginning of in 1839, 500 Chinese workers labored for 23 days to destroy all the contraband opium that they had collected from all these foreign merchants.
So it was actually completely destroyed, maybe sunk into ocean.
No, what he did was he burnt it.
Okay.
Mixed it with lime and burnt it with lime and salt.
Okay.
And then he threw it into the sea.
Okay.
China went on to the high. China itself.
So, because he threw it into the sea, he was so apologetic to the sea. And he actually composed an elegy apologizing to the gods of the sea for polluting.
For polluting the opium.
Their realm.
Ashes of opium.
Absolutely. Okay. So 26 June is actually now the International Day Against Drug Abuse.
I see. Okay.
Actually. And illicit trafficking in honor of Lin Zexu's work.
Okay.
So it's a very memorable date in anti-trafficking, anti-drug abuse, drug abuse thing.
Yeah.
So he confiscated all their opium stocks, and then he also sent a memorial to Queen Victoria. He wrote a letter to Victoria saying that you claim that you are a great emperor sitting so far away, and are you happy with what you're doing? You are barbarian people come here, they corrupt our country, and please desist. He accused the barbarians, a reference to the private merchants, of coveting profit and lacking morality. And he said, a desire that Queen would act in accordance with decent feeling. Look at his language and support his efforts. He wrote to Queen Victoria.
To clean up the mess.
Yes, I mean, you people come here and you are corrupting us all the way from that far away. Please think, is this a morally good thing for you to do? Don't you have any heart of your own? Can you not reflect on? Probably this letter never reached Queen Victoria. There's no record of her having actually read it.
Or maybe it has reached and as expected the British Queen.
But it will take for some time for me to read excerpts from this letter. I do have that.
Okay.
Now, in the meantime, like you just asked me, what was India's attitude to opium?
No, British attitude.
No, India's attitude. Uma asked that question. What was the Western attitude to opium? Were they very happy? Were they selling it or smuggling it to others? What were they doing in their own country back home? So in the mid-18th century, opium and heroin were actually considered relatively safe drugs.
I see.
Okay. And there were advertisement in the newspapers, advertising both opium and heroin in newspapers back home. And as a cough mixture, for example, I have some advertisements I have seen where these are being sold as cough mixtures. And it was quite normal and fashionable to take laudanum, that was the medical equivalent of opium, as a sleeping tonic. People used to even feed babies to stop crying, to feed them with laudanum.
I see.
And laudanum was a widely popular drug during the Victorian era. Okay, there was hardly anybody who was not consuming.
And so, in some sense, Queen Victoria might not have really felt any shame by this letter because it's
she
accepted.
never saw it. I mean, that's what
even if
the
she
history says, that she didn't get it. But somebody must have briefed her about what Chinese are doing in any case. So it was an opium-based painkiller prescribed for everything from headache to tuberculosis. And its consumption was completely common.
Okay.
And let me give you some examples of famous English opium imbibers. S.T. Coleridge, okay? Percy Bysshe Shelley,
Okay.
whose poems all of us would have read.
Yeah.
John Keats,
Oh, I see.
okay? And
So they were all consumers of opium.
E.B. Browning, George Crabbe, Lord Byron, whose romantic poems are, move us so much.
So now we know where the creativity of the British authors lie.
The only exception
Okay.
to all this is William Wordsworth. There's no record of having him consumed
No record. Okay.
opium.
Okay.
But all these big names, Britain, therefore, having surrendered their opium stocks, now they're very indignant because millions of pounds in exchange they would have got for this opium has been snatched from them by this Chinese commissioner for Canton. So they became very, angry. And the merchants tried to take a high moral ground. We have been prevented from free trade. It is our birthright to sell anything to anyone.
Okay.
Why is China preventing it from us?
Okay.
So they drummed up lot of support for themselves, went to parliament.
But it wasn't selling, it was smuggling, right?
True.
Doesn't matter.
So
it was
why
trade.
don't they go to parliament?
No,
true.
because they took a high moral ground. They are being
Yeah.
prevented from having free trade. Why
You
did
call
they have
me
to
a-
smuggle?
You call me smuggler, but I'm a businessman.
No, why did you have to smuggle? Because China is not allowing you to indulge in free trade. I mean, this is what they took. The argument was so repeatedly used by the trading community to drum up anti-China feelings in London. What was the conclusion? The only appropriate riposte to this impossible country was war.
War.
We
So
must go to war against
That's
China.
when the China
because we
war-
have been insulted.
Okay.
Right? So, the quarrel with China was no longer about Britain's economic greed.
Okay.
It was not about their greed,
I know.
but or drug smuggling. It was more about China's contempt for national dignity. They are showing contempt to British, who are so superior to everybody else, right? How can a Westerner be wrong? Right? And they were honor bound to avenge this through military action.
Okay.
So finally, by the end of 1839, British government decided to use force against China.
Okay.
And
So
where?
They broke into war.
They decided to go to war. And where were the soldiers for this war coming from?
India.
India. A fleet of 22 warships was gathered,
Went to China.
including an iron-hulled armed ship called Nemesis, the largest one.
Yeah.
And they also had what they called Congreve rockets. There is not exactly to do with opium, but this is something that I must mention here. In the Mysore wars, Hyder Ali and Tippu Sultan had already used these rockets against. That's why one of the reasons why it took them so many wars to defeat Tippu Sultan.
Correct. Yeah.
And then they defeated him through deceit, not through valor,
Yeah.
mostly.
Yeah.
And when they killed Tippu Sultan in 1799, they acquired these rockets that he had made, took them to Scotland,
Copied them and took them to...
took them to Scotland, gave it to a man called Congreve. And he modified those rockets to some extent, and they called it Congreve rockets.
Okay. Okay.
Tippu Sultan was forgotten
Okay.
because, and they deployed those Congreve rockets in
Against
this war.
China.
So Mysore has a direct connection
With the China. Opium
to
war of
opium war in
of
China, right?
Okay.
So they blockaded Pearl River and just south of Canton and demanded, look at this, they demand £2 million to cover the loss of the confiscated opium. First you smuggle, you corrupt my people, then you say compensate me for my loss.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, this, looking at
So
this in hindsight,
eventually, in some sense, they subjugated the Chinese emperor.
subjugation is acceptable, but insulting them, that I murder you, but for having taken the trouble to murder you, I need, money to be...
Yeah.
Right? So £2 million to cover the loss of confiscated opium. Right? And when the Chinese refused, they started attacking them. Of course, they sank many Chinese ships. The Chinese could not withstand the might of the British Empire. Many of the foot soldiers were from Madras Regiment, Bengal Regiment and all that. And China was no match and had to bow before the military might of Britain. And one little aside here, there were also many of these Western Protestant missionaries who came with these people, British, to convert the heathen Chinese into Christianity. What was their attitude to opium smuggling? Very interesting. So, missionaries were natural allies of the smugglers.
I see.
Why? Because they say they lived with the traders, these smugglers, interpreted for them in exchange for passages up the coast, distributing religious literature. And in Chinese repository, they spread their view on urgent need to open China by whatever means necessary, even if let it be smuggling. But if it opens Chinese to their God, it's quite okay to use that method. So, during the Opium War, one such missionary called Gutslav led the British military occupation of parts of eastern China and ran armies of Chinese spies and collaborators. And so there were many of these missionaries who colluded with the smugglers, and for them, every means was fair to spread
the religion,
the word of Christianity. Finally, of course, the war was over soon. And it ended by the signing and sealing of the treaty at a place called Nanking. It happened on a ship which was called HMS Cornwallis on 29th August 1842. This was the first of the three so-called unequal treaties that China had to suffer. China has suffered this humiliation. Not only for stopping something that was bad, but having to compensate for it by paying them £2 million. So that was all in the treaty.
So Natesh, as a consequence of war, Chinese almost ceded to British. So as a result, what happened? Tea began to flow easily to British then from China?
Not only that, they had access to ports. See, this was one major concession that the Chinese had. They demanded this, that we should not be confined to outside the fort area. We should be allowed access to the inside, interior parts of China. Secondly, pay indemnity of $20 million silver dollars to compensate for the loss of...
all that is fine. But now coming back to this tea, so Chinese ceded. We'll agree to that. As a result, did the tea flew to Britishers freely then as a result of
because China, now British had access to go into the interiors, they then went back and commissioned a man called Robert Fortune to go incognito and quietly study what is this tea plant.
And another smuggling, in other words.
Oh, absolutely. What this tea plant looks like, where does it grow? Is green, first discover where is the green tea plant, where is the blue the black tea plant, how is it processed, and then acquire some plants, acquire the knowledge about how to cultivate tea, and then bring it back to us.
So this guy Fortune brought all that knowledge back. Perhaps with some tea plants also.
Robert Fortune dressed himself like a Chinese. He shaved off his head. He put hair like the Chinese. He dressed like a Chinese. He hired a local Chinese fellow, servant. The servant go in front of him and announce this great man from this long away province is coming. He's honoring your factory. Will you please show him your process of making tea? So he visited several of these plantations, and then to his surprise, Robert Fortune discovered that it is not the tea comes in two species. Green tea and black tea are the same, but the way you process it after harvest is different. So he acquired, in short, to cut the long story short, he acquired tea plants. Thousands of them he collected. Then by that time, the British had the Chinese had ceded Hong Kong to the British. Right.
Oh, as a result of this war.
As a result of this war. So he brought them and grew them in a nursery, sent them to Calcutta Botanic Garden. And from there it went to Saharanpur and then spread to various parts.
I heard, Uma, I think you were telling me that a guy from Saharanpur, a scientist from Saharanpur is the one who actually found out that Himalayan belt is good for tea cultivation. Do you...
Yeah, I have read about that, especially the Himalayan belt, which is the Darjeeling and the Assam contiguous area. So they were found by the way, the British were really experts in what we today call habitat suitability analysis.
Niche
suitability. They did this repeatedly for rubber, they did it for tea, they did it for the quinine plant, all of them. I mean, no one could have thought about that sort of level of expertise that they had in this area. So tea was supposed
So Natesh, having brought those plants, they planted it along the Himalayan belt in India, or they took it elsewhere also?
They did it in Himalayan belt. Meanwhile, they also found some tea plants near Assam and all that, which was slightly different in its flavor, its strength and all that. So today you have Assam tea, and then you have this Darjeeling tea. It spread to the Nilgiris. So South Indian belt, you had these...
I think the very concept of plantation was by the British, either of tea or of any such things.
In fact, one of the reasons why Nilgiris is in some kind of peril, because they systematically took away the natural shola forests, then started cultivating tea, they started cultivating eucalyptus for fuel, and acacia and eucalyptus
so
for
that
fuel.
Tea was freely now available to British. It went to the West, correct?
It helped their economy, and they profited at the cost of India. To a great extent. In fact, I have figures somewhere here on what was the GDP percentage contribution of India before the arrival of the British, the world GDP, and what happened before the British left, and how we became impoverished.
Tharoor speaks about 27% was our
and
contribution.
Yes, it was.
Came to 3%.
And then they started profiting so much more. So we were... They literally subjugated. Our economy was subsumed by these colonizers.
And I'm sure you also would explain on how the same tea brought independence to America.
Part of the reason, they had many other reasons also. Besides this, the British laid a very heavy tax on when it was sold to or sent to America, and the Americans felt that it was unjustified. So they revolted, and in the famous Tea Party in the Boston Harbor, which is greatly celebrated annually and so on today, they threw away the chests of tea into the sea and said we won't pay any taxes on it. So this was one of the major contributors to the independence movement, among many other things also.
This point what Dr. Natish mentioned about the Boston Tea Party, I think it was a tipping point between the American colonists and the Britain, which sort of triggered the entire sort of independence of America.
The
just
last
few later
straw that broke the camel's back type.
Absolutely. And so in some way, I think the fact of this coffee drinking could also be a rebellious act of, showing patriotism to in fact, the birth of US started with that. The 13 American colonies that were there first.
Apparently this, dumping of the tea in Boston ports was a very great event, turning the entire ocean there into black color.
Even today, if you go there, they have this the ship there, and you can they recreated the whole scene. And if you go there, the whole circuit, you can. This is part of that history of the.
So great history. So in other words, just this one plant has brought in wars between China and British. This one plant has led to the opium cultivation and exploitation
Addiction
of our
of
peasants.
millions of people.
Addiction of millions of people in China. This has also now led to the exploitation of the Indian peasants as kind of bonded people for tea cultivation. Has led to the independent fight with China, and maybe many more that one can think of.
This is a very fascinating story, but there are other stories that are equally fascinating.
Yeah.